rationalize how they are very, very right and others are very, very wrong. And from
I think Bellior is very accurate about this, and this is something that I've learned before myself, is that like I have a I don't really understand why people get emotional. I'm not an emotional person, and because I'm not an emotional person, when people react emotionally, I don't really know how to approach it or how to react to it, because it's like putting water on a computer. It just like short circuits my brain. I'm like, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you thinking like this? Why can't you just think about this normally? How many people have been accused of being Zionists because they think that Ethan Klein has a reasonable claim to against fair use for Denim's, Frogan, and Caseytron? And they're being called Zionists, that they like Ethan Klein, they're Nazis, and all of this other stuff. It's totally illogical. And what I've learned is that people are just simply not logical. The strongest argument isn't an argument. And because of that, people like Pirate Software fall into the trap of trying to logically reason with people that do not want to be reasoned with. Yet you're wrong. You can, but they have to be open for the conversation to change. I'm talking about in a general sense, not in an individual sense. In a lot of cases, on an individual personal level, you can change people's minds. But once people get together in groups, it's like the, the Men in Black quote, a person's smart, but people are stupid. I think that the more people and the more momentum a mindset has, the more one-dimensional it becomes, because it has to cater to that increasingly lower common denominator. So yeah, no, I could talk about this a lot, because it's group psychology, basically. And I think that Bellior, the reason why is I really think Bellior had a great insight with this. And it's something I've never heard discussed before. It's that when you try to apply logic to some situations, many people are just simply unwilling to hear it, even if you, and this is what happens to me, even if you can prove, like I had this happen with my mom, for example. Like I would tell my mom whenever I was like 8 and 9 years old, I said, why are you smoking cigarettes? Cigarettes are going to kill you. It says cigarettes kill you. You know cigarettes are going to kill you. They're expensive and they're killing you. Why would you want to kill yourself? And she just kept smoking cigarettes. And I could just never understand that. It never made sense. Why would you do this? And it transcended all rationality in my mind. I still, even to this day, I can't understand it.
Hey, big man, you ready to...
And so it's hard to stop. Well, it's hard to do a lot of things. It doesn't mean you just shouldn't do it, right? And so that's right. It's not a choice. Well, there's plenty of people that choose to stop smoking. Many people choose to stop smoking. They do it every day. But she just wasn't one of them. And so anyway, I just couldn't understand it. And that was probably the first time that I came into conflict with this.
Never say Hulk is stupid just because
Other
Banner
people
is smart.
think, and to not have a holistic view of a situation. I mean, to put it in very simple terms, people thought he came off really defensive. And what all of this meant was fuel for the fire, an abundance of fuel. And I've got to imagine that from Pirate's point of view, it really must have looked like the entire world was against.
Well, they were.
Per the dynamics of Twitch, it was an incredible content event. And the reality is that once people are against you, it's very hard to change minds. Especially when, as I think Pirate was, you're feeling...
Somebody says, remember you saying anything, best way I could explain it to you as a non-smoker, cigarettes for a smoker, what soda is to you? Yeah, but my mom was a Catholic, and I remember I said to her, I was like 8 or 9 years old at this time. I said, if killing yourself makes you go to hell, then wouldn't you go to hell for doing something that's killing yourself? And she's like, yeah, I don't know. And like, I had thought this up. And I was like, okay, this is going to convince her to stop doing it. Didn't work. That's a bad analogy? Well, I'm just saying, it's just using logic. But yeah, and addiction doesn't care. Yeah, it doesn't. People do not follow logic.
quite defensive, and you're very much feeling the toll of thousands of angry people being very angry at you in just about every way they can. Meaning that, yeah, some people were, let's just say, going beyond having just a civil disagreement. Now, after that point,
I was also 8 or 9 years old.
There was a clip of an Ashes of Creation raid where they started a bit of a drama. There were then accusations of pre-watching games in order to look better on screen. There was critique of the Blizzard credentials, and a whole lot of different things. Basically, we turned into somewhat of a punching bag. Now, to, I suppose, try and work through some of this through the session with Dr. K, I think it's a pretty enlightening one. It certainly is, I'd say, a good listen. It essentially did get into why he reacted the way he did, what he actually felt. I'm not going to paraphrase here too much beyond just what I've already said. So I'd recommend, if you want more texture, more understanding of this story and the social dynamics that made it play out, give Dr.
Let's see here. I agree that the raid made a half game, I think, behind his stance on stop killing games is extremely biased. I think that people were unhappy about his stance because he came at it from the perspective of a developer, and most players don't care about a developer's perspective because they're not developers.
K's video to watch. But as it
pretty
pertains to
simple.
the Stop Killing Games movement, I think you can see how, well, whenever there was the initial disagreement with Ross about stocks were looking pretty good. Then it involved in several major dramas. These dramas led to hundreds and hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of people talking out about him or having a changed opinion. There were a lot of videos talking about, you know, mistakes, examining everything. And that's why right now, before this video, when I just searched for pirate software on YouTube, here's what I got. We've got the Pirate Software Unraveling featuring a game developer, 211k views. A Josh Strife Hayes reaction, 204k views. An Axeman video, 586k views. An Upper Echelon video, 266k views. One from Moist Critical, 3.1 million views. And that is just the top few search results.
Yep.
We're talking about millions of views here.
A lot
Now,
of people.
While so many of these were rooted in dramatic aspect, obviously they were related to Stop Killing Games, and they all painted Stop Killing Games in a positive light. And what that essentially meant is that now you don't need to be a game preservation enthusiast to know that Stop Killing Games all you need is a patent.
This is actually a very good insight from Belluer again. This is a great video that he made. He's saying that the hate on pirate software that made him oppositional to Stop Killing Games made the initiative more accessible to more people. This is a very, very good insight.
Some interest in one of the larger ongoing dramas.
I think he's right.
Of course, even if you didn't have that, social media algorithms do know how to find you to be interested. All of that means a humongous megaphone. And so far, it absolutely seems it's done the trick. We've
That
gone
was
from
his
almost certain
intent, though?
failure at
Well, I'm just talking about how it
454k signatures to, at the time of writing this video, 714k. And at the time
And
of
now it's at
recording,
1.1
only a few
million.
hours later, 737k.
Easy.
Now that basically means
less than a day after.
3k in about 30 days. And obviously, if this rate holds just a little bit longer, they'll absolutely make it. Or will they? Because here's the thing. They do actually need consistent, legitimate signatures.
Yep.
The reason why it's fairly simple. Fake ones could be stripped out. Overexcited Americans having fun with a VPN, I don't know, could probably try to sign up for this. Wouldn't help the initiative. It would probably get scrubbed. And, well,
That was definitely
America
not a good
can't
thing.
sign an petition. So
Yeah.
it's not a guaranteed thing just yet, but it certainly is looking like it's going to pass 1 million. Now, what happens if it succeeds is basically this. The EU Commission will consider further action. That could be legislative action, or it could just be guidance on existing consumer laws. Now, no matter what, the
Chaos
industry would have
surrounds us.
significant input,
I would
but
gladly
regardless, we
show
would
it
get
who's
a
in
formal
control.
statement on the matter and its legality. And that's actually a powerful starting point for future conversations and new laws.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, it gets even better. Because
30
those
seconds before
conversations
you
have
attack.
already
Get
begun,
ready.
and we've already started to make progress. Through all the noise and all the
It
drama,
has.
the core problem is fairly
This is a
simple.
great
That
thing.
audiences often think they're buying a product when they buy a game, but in reality, they're actually buying licenses. Now,
Yep.
since October, Steam explicitly states that all purchases are licenses, that it's not ownership. And that was all.
I don't think that's enough. Just because you say
battle starts in
something
5,
should be a certain way
4,
doesn't mean it
3,
it is that way.
1.
I think that a customer should be entitled to certain things when they spend their money, and you shouldn't be able to just take it away from them because they signed some TOS. That's bullshit.
case, it's just that now it's no longer hidden in your EULA. And Valve's timing was, let's just say, curious here, not because California signed AB 2426, stating that any media that can't permanently access offline must be labeled as a license, not a product. Now,
there it
oversight,
is.
This is companies
That's a
seeing
good start.
PR opportunities, and there's a beautiful irony. Ubisoft, yes, the very company that started this whole mess, is actually taking action. That's because they're testing offline modes for the crew and Motorfest, and I think it's so, you know what? In certain ways,
And I think there's also like a certain level of consumer advocacy that certain games and publishers will feel pressure to do this, even outside of the legal expectations. Like, now that companies are more afraid to do... A great example of this is like Web3 and NFT stuff. Like, nowadays, saying that you're going to make an NFT game or a Web3 game, this is like an immediate pass for, I would say, 98% of the internet. And so because there's such a negative sentiment around it, I think that it's created a feedback loop where companies are not making content that way.
Winning. Now, another thing that could inspire this was an actual lawsuit, specifically for California. But that lawsuit is actually facing some problems right now. And that's because of the Final Fantasy XI related precedent that lets companies remove users from games. Because, well, as a user, all you bought is a license, and that can be revoked. That's a ruling that obviously plays to Ubisoft's advantage in the lawsuit, but looking at the big picture, we actually do see the developers are choosing to address these issues.
I agree with companies being able to remove users from their own servers. Like, for example, like if you're on a multiplayer server and you're cheating, I think they should 100% be able to ban you. I think it's good to think like that. I do. I'm very much a big fan of that. I think it's a great thing. I think that every company should exist, at least not for the detriment of the population. I'm a big advocate for consumer rights and consumer protections.
And not because they're being forced to by the law, seemingly because they want to. Well, the reasons for that could be PR, or it could simply be they see what way the wind is blowing. Here's something cool. Take a look at Super Moves
Same as
World of
Web3.
Parkour. This is an indie game that failed. Legal obligations prevent keeping the online functions active, but existing owners can still play it in single player. There's another example. Whenever Blizzard Entertainment purchased Spellbreak's developer, they obviously stopped the game. But months later, they released a free-to-play version of the game on itch.io. That's awesome. And before all of this, Valiant Studios ended Knockout City.
Yeah, there's no reason why they can't do this.
Feel the wrath of the
Really,
goddess!
there's no reason why they can't do it. And also, by the way, we can just tell them to do it. You realize that, right? We can just say, you have to do this now. And if enough of us get together and we say, you have to do this now, then they have to do it. Because that's the way the government works.
They made sure the private server still would work. This is
It's that
basically
simple.
3 indie teams finding a way to preserve their games retroactively. It is good shit. It matters. Now, yes,
great.
it is the case that player counts may be in the single digits, but it preserves gaming history. If a bunch of people want to play one of these games together, they actually can. And if Stop Killing Games passes, developers would have to consider things like this, not retroactively, but from day one. And that doesn't mean you can no longer make an MMO. You can still make
Yeah, of course
Helldivers,
you can.
but you'll need to sell your games correctly.
Like a peer-to-peer
You'll need to
or something
label
like that,
them
yeah.
as what they actually are. Are they products or are they licenses? And you'd need to provide some sort of exit plan whenever servers shut down. And
Exactly.
nobody is saying that retrofitting games